Well everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Xbox One S and see how this specific console holds up in 2020. Now, funny enough, this specific console I've talked about in almost every single video game console video I've ever done, and the reason for that is because this is one of my most favorite designed consoles of all time. This is by far one of the best designed consoles I think Microsoft has ever done, but also pretty much any video game manufacturer has ever made. I mean, the only thing in my opinion that kind of comes close to this is like a Nintendo DS Lite. I love the way the Nintendo Wii looks. I love the PlayStation 3, and I love the PS4 Slim. I love how that console, the PlayStation 5 is up there as well. But this Xbox One S, I just love the way it looks. And even in 2023, after the release of the Xbox Series S, I realized that Microsoft loved the way this console looked too. If you think about it, the Xbox Series S looks way more in line with something like an Xbox One S than an Xbox One X or the original Xbox One. So if you want to pick up maybe not an Xbox One S we'll talk about throughout this video, but really any Xbox, I'll leave some links in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with this specific console, the first thing to keep in mind was that this was not a brand new crazy iteration of the Xbox One. It was just an iteration. It was supposed to be a better, console overall than the Xbox One. And I think Microsoft did a pretty good job during that moment. So this console came out in 2016. So this year it will be approaching, 7 years old now, which is actually pretty insane. You would never think that a console like this is already this old, but I would say that, is one way to look at it. But I think this console has aged very gracefully for the last few years that this thing's been out. So starting off with the price tag as well, this thing sold for the base model at $300, but it did go up to $400 during that moment. And again, I think that's totally fine. That was a pretty decent price tag. I think it was a little bit cheaper than what the original Xbox One sold for. So I think that was another cool thing that ended up coming out there for this specific console as well. Now with the outside of this console, you can see that we do have this beautiful design. Again, I don't know how much I can go and talk about this console. I mean, I can talk about this console forever because it just looks so nice. So depending on which one you got, because there was a discless version of this specific console, you had that disc tray on the front of this console, which was awesome, as well as the Xbox power button. Now the reason why I even mention that is because the Xbox Series S, as all of you probably know, doesn't really have a disc tray anymore. So that can be kind of a disadvantage for some people. If you were planning on buying something like an Xbox and you didn't have that disc tray, well, there goes a lot of backward compatibility games that you may have been able to play before, but also there goes the ability of buying used games. So at least with this type of console, you still have a massive library of games that's kind of coming to an end, but you still have a massive library of games at this thing, and you can buy them in the used market because this thing does have that disc tray. So that is a really cool thing you're getting there. On the top though, this is a very good looking top as well. It's kind of cut in half, so you have the holes on the bottom, then you have the straight, flat texture on the top. And that was another really cool thing that this console has going for it too. And when I look at it, I still think it looks really nice. Now on top of that, you do have the power button like I mentioned on the front. You are also getting a USB port on the front of this console too, which I think that in and of itself is a really nice thing. If you were getting something like the Xbox One S, well, at least you have a USB port on the front, because that way you do have the ability of still charging up some things and even an external drive if you want to on the front of your console, rather than having to reach around on the back. Now on top of that, on the back of this console, we had a lot of ports here too, which is honestly very surprising. So we have the AC adapter, so this is how you basically power up the console. We also have 2 HDMI ports. So a lot of people get confused why we have 2. It's not to output to 2 different TVs. In a way, it kind of is. So what you can do with these 2 ports is you have an HDMI in and an HDMI out. So what this console can do is, let's say you have a monitor that only supports one HDMI port. Well, what you can do, instead of getting some sort of HDMI splitter or changing your monitor, you can actually plug in another device into your Xbox One S and have it basically be able to be like an HDMI splitter, and you can go ahead and export. You can basically output anything that the Xbox One S is plugged into from that HDMI output or input. It'll be displayed on the monitor. So I've seen a lot of people plug in a PlayStation 4 and then a Nintendo Switch, things like that from their Xbox One S. And that's a really nice touch that you have. And I'm surprised Microsoft removed it with the newer consoles, but you do have it on this console, which is really cool. You also are getting another USB ports, another 2 USB ports on the back of this console. You're getting like audio output, you're getting Ethernet port, and those are pretty much the main ports that you're getting on the back of this console. Now, personally for me, I think that is a very nice array of ports to have. Again, if they put like more USB ports, USB-C, that would have been cool. They still haven't put it on the Xbox Series S or X, which is crazy, but I do like the way these consoles have held up in that standpoint, because the HDMI out and in is a very nice thing that I'm surprised Microsoft removed. Now, another big thing going on with this console was that it was supposed to be, again, a more affordable approach for the Xboxes, but it was also be a much slimmer and smaller console than the previous generation. So it was apparently 40% smaller than its predecessor, and because of that, newer color and the newer style, I think it kind of differentiated itself quite a bit coming from its predecessor. I looked at the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 4 Slim, and those looked way more similar. It was just smaller, but it was way more similar than the Xbox One to the Xbox One S. Like, it totally looked like a completely different console, which was honestly very cool. Now, another thing, this thing also got some changes internally. It was, it did have the ability of supporting 4K Ultra HD video streaming and Hdr Gaming Support. So that was another really cool thing going on for this console. And because of that cheaper price tag, you had that ability of speccing this thing out to more storage if you wanted to, and even saving some money compared to getting like an external drive. For example, if you wanted to get the base model, it was 500 gigabytes. But if you wanted to go up, you could go all the way up to 2 terabytes, and you might be able to save some money that way rather than buying like the original Xbox One and getting an external drive. So that was another really cool thing that kind of happens as a byproduct when you are getting a cheaper console. So this thing pretty much lasted up until from 2016, maybe up until 2020, some people could probably argue, and that's when the new Xboxes came out. Now, with these consoles, the Xbox Series S and X, I think those are great consoles. I think they're awesome, but when I bought those consoles in 2020 and I still have them, I thought to myself, I don't really think the Xbox Ones, even the original one, is going to be completely outdated. I remember with the PlayStation 4, there was a little bit of leeway period, but quickly, it felt like within like 2 years, most of the game developers were making things for the PlayStation 4s, the Xbox Ones. That could be because the PS3s and Xbox 360s, they kind of lasted for quite a bit of time too during that moment. But I feel like with the Xbox One S, this console, even though there's already a successor directly within the same line of this console, but also within the next iteration, like there's already the upgraded hardware, I still feel like something like the Xbox One S still has a lot of power, and I still feel like the gaming selection you have behind this thing is still up there as well. So I look at this console, right? I look at what it brought, I look at how it's held up so far through the last 7 years or something, and I look at this console and I look at the Xbox Series X and S, and I am surprised about how well this console has held up for the last several years. I feel like Xbox and Microsoft did a tremendous job with this device. Is it perfect? No. Definitely this thing could have had more ports. It could have been more powerful. I'm sure there was some crazy issue going on with this console they could have fixed. I've always felt like they should have rechargeable batteries in the controller as well that they still haven't done. You have to buy them separately. But with all that being said, I still think the Xbox One S is one of my favorite consoles probably ever made, and it was an amazing choice done by Microsoft. Was it the perfect console? No. But if you wanted to go and buy an Xbox and, you wanted to save a little bit more money compared to the Xbox One, I think this was a really decent choice. And even now, I still think this console is worth buying. If you have a massive library of Xbox One games, or if you don't really plan on playing exclusive titles for the Xbox X or Xbox Series S, you might be okay with this type of console. But if you want to save yourself a little bit of time and a little bit of headache, you might want to go up to something like an Xbox Series S. You're not getting the disc tray in it, but you are getting, the ability of playing the newer next generation games, and you might be able to do some backwards compatibility with your digital Xbox library. But I love this thing, the One S, because it does have a disc tray, because it has the HDMI out and in, and I think that's a really cool thing going for this console. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that will mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.